So people, hope that you can hear me once again. Hello everybody, welcome to the show, to one more episode of Let's Get Moving podcast. Today I would like to discuss a little bit more into one of the most misunderstood areas of sport performance. So I would like to discuss with you about the athlete assessment. So it's not about training today, it's not about programming, it's not about the speed, it's not about the agility, it's not about strength, but the thing that determines whether all of those will actually work. So because here's the reality that I believe it is, most coaches are obsessed with writing programs, very perfect ones, but the elite coaches are obsessed with understanding the athletes and what's behind them. So excuse me, I got a sore throat, so I'm going to be very thorough with you today. So what I believe is that actually the average coach sees a player and asks what workout should I give it to him. But the elite coaches are asking what is the limitation in his performance. And those are two completely different questions. And that difference separates a generic training from a world-class performance development, by my belief. And today, I would like to talk a little bit more and walk you through my complete assessment system testing that I do with my clients. So a full spectrum of testing battery just creates what I call the complete athlete picture. And the goal here is very simple to me. So before I prescribe, I diagnose. Before I train, I like to assess. Before I change the adaptation, I identify the limitation within my clients. So because if you do not assess, I think you're guessing. And when you're guessing, you're just going through the fog, and it can be very expensive. It costs time, it costs money, it costs performance. Sometimes it can even cost you a career. So you don't want anything like this similar to happen. So what I like to do in these situations is following. So imagine trying to build a house, but you never inspected the foundation of the house. You never measure the walls, you never measure the plumbing. So you never check the structural integrity of your house. So would you trust that house to be in it? Of course not. So it is the same with creating those programs. And yet the coaches are doing this every single day. So they write their specific program without even understanding, the movement quality of a performer, what is the force production of this client, the recovery status, the injury history, the nutritional habits, routines, physiological readiness of the and the mindset of the athlete. And that's why the athlete becomes a mystery, and the mystery creates problems. So, and I think the off season is the perfect opportunity for the athletes, because the athlete is no longer trapped into a competition phase. Fatigueness is very more lower, stress is lower, time availability is higher. And this allows, of course, to gather information that may be hidden during the season. Assessment isn't just testing for sake of testing. Assessment is information gathering to me. And the information reduces the uncertainty along the way. And uncertainty is the enemy of the performance in all of the cases. So if we would start with this, we can also start with medical history, for example. So the first thing I assess isn't the speed, so isn't the strength, and isn't even the body fat, the body composition. So it's the athlete's story per se. So medical history tells us if there are any previous surgeries, chronic conditions, medications use, injury patterns, family health concerns. And every athlete carries a history, and history leaves clues along the way, and the body remembers everything. A previous ACL a reconstruction from an athlete, everything also changes the movement. For example, a hamstring tear changes sprint mechanics. The angle strain changes the force absorption. So many athletes recover only clinically, but few of them are recovered completely. And these questions also includes, when I ask them, have they ever had a surgery? What's the previous fractures, concussions, recruiting plan, medication use, sleep disorders? So is this present? So the athlete's medical history becomes the first chapter of this performance story. And this has to be, underlined here. So, and then after that, we can move to a body composition, not just simply doing a body weight, But those are just not the same thing. Weight tells us a mass, but body composition tells us the quality. So to use in a spectrum of using the height, using the weight, the lean body mass, the body fat percentage, then the hydration status. Why? Because every single sport has an optimal profile. A sprinter is very different from a rugby player. A goalkeeper is different from a midfield player. A basketball, center differs from a marathon runner, for example. So the question becomes here, is the athlete carrying useful mass for his specific sport or non-functional mass? How should I say? So extra muscle may also improve the force production, but extra fat may increase, the energy cost. So the assessment testing allows us to quantify the gap between current and optimal, what is here in these situations. So then not to forget the functional movement. So this is where the movement becomes also very visible, and then we evaluate on the functional movement screening. So we assess the mobility, stability, movement quality of an athlete. And many athletes are very strong, but a few of them just moving well. And there is often more like mobility restrictions. There becomes, of course, the force leakings, spectrums, and this movement insufficiencies becomes performance ceiling. And the key areas here that we have to adapt is what are the patterns. For example, if you do a squat, can they sit deeply? Can they maintain posture? Can they control alignment? Or per se, if you're doing like hip mobility exercises, the restricted hips affects sprinting, the change of direction, jumping, so everything that includes it. Or even like a shoulder function, it's very critical for throwing, for as a goalkeeper or if you're a swimmer or handball player. So, the list goes on and on. And, if you're doing like a rotatory stability, the elite movement is very coordinated movement and not isolated movement. So these body functions should be connected within the system, movement system. If you like to do also a strength composition, so I like to do also the assessment because it's a foundation of any athleticism, and it's not about talking when it comes to speed, the power, not about the resilience. These are just the co-products. So I like to do a 1 repetition maximum testing or 3 repetition maximum testing depending on the athlete's development. So there is also force production development and what is the symmetry in those. So the strongest athletes aren't always the best athletes. And the best athlete for me produces force very efficiently. So I like to measure what is the absolute strength, how much force can an athlete produce, and what is also the relative strength. So how much force can you produce relatively to your body weight? Bilaterally and unilaterally. So if one side is dominating, so then you can switch to the rate of force development. So how quickly can force be expressed? And sport doesn't just reward the force eventually. So the sport rewards force as instantly. So at the moment, how fast can you fire up? And this is where, for me, where the strength becomes athletic. And in this testing, I like to include the sprint testing, jump testing, repeated jump testing, change of direction, and acceleration. And for me, athletes win games because of that power, not because of the gym numbers or I do not know how much you can bench press. So the power is the force times velocity here. So you need to evaluate on this. And when it comes to acceleration testing, I like to do the testing on 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters. This is the most important phase in many sport disciplines. So I like to do also because I can take and extract the maximum velocity. So how fast can the athlete move? And within the jump performance, we also have a vertical jump, we have the broad jump, we have the reactive jump on a time scale. So to reveal that explosive potential. And with the change of direction, there is a T-testing. So can that force be redirected very efficiently? And what is the difference here? And the good athletes, can move very efficiently here with their weight. So they can change direction very fast. And this is very crucial when, giving the assignments afterward, how your training plan is going to work. But athletic performance, requires a lot of energy. And the question is above that, so can the athlete repeatedly produce that high output? So I like to do when it comes to assessment, so the VO2 maximal testing, aerobic capacity, and heart rate recovery. So the strong engine as a heart supports, the recovery, the work capacity, repeated speed ability, and the heart rate recovery is particularly powerful. So that's why I use a couple of gadgets and applications. So the fast recovery often really reflects on your fitness, how you can adapt, what is the nervous system efficiency afterwards when you fatigue. So the athlete who recovers much more faster often performs the longest. And that is the cue from this 15 years of my experience. But many athletes, even nowadays train professionally. But not to forget they eat very recreationally. So nutritional assessment includes, what I like to do is the food diary analysis, not just the macronutrient and hydration, and also the supplements usage. So the body cannot outperform its fuel. So the question is here, not just are the calories sufficient? Is protein adequate that you're using? Are carbohydrates supporting your performance? Are the supplements that you're also using are evidence-based, or they actually bring something to you? What time of day? So the food is information, and the body reads every single meal. The pure nutrition eventually will appear to your recovery, to your hormones liking, to your performance, and then you have the injuries. So everything combines together and everything is connected, interconnected. So you need to see this. So everything eventually is much more important what you're doing beside the training area. And when it comes to mindset, so this often is also pretty much ignored. But in these situations, I like to assess and to see how my athlete responds to stress, to the moodiness, what is the confidence, what is the focus, what is the cognitive readiness under the specific demand. So the mentally exhausted athlete really performs physically, and those questions are very including for me. So what is the motivational level? What is the anxiety? What is the confidence? Are there any burnout indicators? So it's not just purely physical, so it's the psychophysiological as well. And the mind and the body are inseparable, so they are functioning together all the way. And this is what's different from a very average athlete to the ones that are dominating. And not to forget the recovery determines adaptation. So without your recovery, what happens in between? So other line, it's a very important. Trainings becomes just a pure destruction to yourself, to your body. So all of these assessments, I like to see what is the muscle soreness, what is the HRV monitor readiness, now what is the sleep quality pattern. So many athletes train hard, which is very good, but few of them are recover even harder. So adaptations happens during that recovery and not during the training sessions. And training is just a pure stimulus. And this is what the differentiation that we need to understand. Recovery is where the magical things are happening. So if you are doing this on the proper scale, you will see much more faster the performance output. And what are the injuries? The injuries can also predict the next injuries. And all the research just constantly shows that the previous injury is one of the strongest predicators of the future injury. So you need to evaluate on the location of the injury, what is the severity of the injury, what is the frequency, and what is the mechanism patterns that emerge here. So if you see, for example, repeated hamstring injuries, so our recurring groin strain, or chronic ankle instability, so these become priority intervention or your targeted muscles, and you have to address them very drastically to put them under the loop for a specific amount of time, even extended amount of time. But what is the internal physiological state is not to forget also the blood testing. So reveal something that your eye cannot see. So I like to analyze the CBC, the iron status, the hormones, vitamin D, macronutrients, inflammatory markers, so that athletes can do this palette of testing and to see if they're healthy or not. So the blood work can also tell a completely different story, and performance starts, on the cellular level, and cells creates tissues, and tissues creates movement. So the movement then after all will create performance. So everything is interconnected, and you have to realize this. And most of the cases, is where the people are ready to put the brake here. They don't want to go above that. So this is where the science for me meets movement. So, and I like to assess not just a pure running mechanics. So what is the force data, kinetic chain function or movement efficiency? Technological nowadays allows us to see the visible performance variable. Also the force asymmetries, the landing strategies, and the patterns, ground contact times, movement sequences, biomechanical explanations why, some performance happens or did not happen. So it's much more complex now, but it gives us the opportunity to switch to a much more higher level. But now if we step back and look, the entire picture, so each the assessment is like a puzzle piece. And those individually variables collectively can be very transformational for you. Once again, if you put like the medical history, if you put the body composition, your movement quality, strength, power, what is conditioning, nutritional habits, a mental state and health. And then above all, I always put the recovery. Yes, not to forget the injury risk, the blood analysis, and just the pure biomechanic. Together they will create, that's total athlete assessment testing. So this is my complete athlete profile, and I'm very serious with it. So this is my standard. And the goal isn't just collecting those data. The goal is making better decisions when I receive them. So these are my principles that I like to do for any elite athlete. So you have to access with purpose and never test your athlete without a reason. So I like to identify those performance gaps, and I'm also very data driven because of it. It reveals the weaknesses. So I use them as a pure evidence to trust the science, not just what is trendy here, to reassess, reevaluate on a regular basis, and those testings I will repeat on a 3 or 4 month period of time. So then I integrate, redirect, and act. So those data without action is very useless. So assessment must drive your programming and to see how you're going to adapt and to see the progression. So the greatest coaches for me are necessarily the best motivators. They are necessary even the loudest. So they are also not necessarily the smartest thing. The greatest coaches for me are the best observers because performance leaves clues and the body leaves those clues on a daily basis. The athlete leaves clues, and assessment testing is the process of finding those clues. And when you find them, your training becomes much more precise. The results became predictable for you. And for me, the athlete becomes much more capable of reaching levels they never thought possible. So this is my a note to you. So do not train what you don't see. Train what the assessment testing reveals to you, because every single elite performer player begins with those evaluations. So if you need a guidance, so write me a guide in the description box below. Thank you for listening. And of course, I will see you in one of my next podcast episodes. So stay tuned and God bless.